Hi, everybody, and welcome to our panel discussion on AI to work out, is this going to be brilliant or are we all doomed? So please welcome our a panel of esteemed AI experts. My name's Jack Renwick. I run a branding agency called Jack Renwick Studio, and I'm this year's D&AD President. I'm going to host this chat, and you are...
Chris Moody. So I'm a global ECD of Landy. Prior to that, I was Chief Design Officer at Wolf Ollins for 18 years. So I'm kind of a brand dad. I've been around for a long time, and I've seen a lot of change, and this is the biggest. So looking forward to this.
Hi, I'm Landy Slattery, Creative Innovation Director at 4 Creative at Channel 4.
Hello, I'm Jeff Bowerman. I'm ECD of an agency called D&AD. Apparently 30% of our revenue is AI based. I found that out today. So yeah, we do quite a lot of it.
And hello, I'm Taz. I'm a creative director at Adobe, and I essentially look after Creative Cloud for all our clients and customers.
Cool, so hopefully you guys will know a lot more than I do about AI. So before we get started, we've got a little kind of slidometer thing that we want to test with you guys in our audience. And I'm just going to hope this works. Okay, so if you could scan this QR code a wee second, and I've got 3 questions coming up that I would like you to give your immediate reaction to. And then at the end, we're going to ask these questions again and see if there's any change in the metrics. So, is everybody scanned? Well, here we go, it's moving. This is going to be it's like tomorrow night election results, isn't it? You know, it's like, hopefully whatever the Tory bit is over there will be avoided. No politics on stage, Jack. Has everybody got that one?
Is it out of 10 or is it out of 5?
I don't know. I suppose it'll tell you on the phone. So, do you believe AI can enhance creativity in your field?
It's kind of mesmerizing.
I know. Everybody got an answer in? And oh, hang on. Do you trust AI to make decisions in creative processes? And how likely are you to use AI tools in your work? If you've got an answer to that. Ooh. Okay, brilliant. So, we'll come back to that in a wee bit. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into the questions with you guys. There's quite a few questions, and then I'm sure there'll be questions from the audience as well. And we won't spend the time everybody answering all the same question. We'll just sort of go to whoever feels passionate to jump in. Chris, I'll give you this mic, because we're really poor and we've only got 4 mics, so we have to just share this. Right, guys. In what ways can AI enhance the creative process that traditional tools cannot?
Go on, I'll start. So first of all, I'm a big believer. I think it's the best thing that's happened in a very, very long time, right? It's just been kind of branded slightly badly. It's a magic pencil that allows you to do billions of things that you couldn't do before, and it's going to be absolutely brilliant. So everyone needs to relax about it, first of all. The reason why it's brilliant is because it allows you to do some things that you couldn't do. It allows you to do volume of creativity, and volume's a good thing if you're a really good editor. So it means that you're going to need to be a proper creative director again and go through and edit and critique and look at stuff in different ways. It's really good because it also allows you to have governance where you couldn't have governance before. You can protect a creative idea and allow that creative idea to live in the world in a really, really pure way, in a way that you couldn't before. It's not about control, it's about making sure that that vision that you had is as perfect as it can possibly be. So I'm a big supporter of it. I think it'll be a really, really good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I'm a massive believer too.
The magic pencil, I'm loving that, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that actually in a a new world where you can actually come up with visuals faster than the speed of light, right? As creatives, we've all, I'm sure everyone on this panel has spent years pitching ideas, and quite often you're pitching to people who don't have an imaginative mind. So no matter of descriptions or anything like that is going to sort of help it. And I think being able to visualize, and I heard Taz, you told, when we were talking yesterday, actually, you told a great sort of story about like a storyboard where suddenly everyone had the idea of like it possibly being from a different point of view instead of being behind the camera, actually being behind the head of the protagonist, or whatever. Suddenly, you can change that whole storyboard in the matter of seconds, and everybody look and agree on that. And I just think it just means that we can all be more creative, basically. That's it. Yeah.
Magic. I think we'll take this from everybody because I think it's a really important question.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe from a personal perspective, and I think maybe a lot of people in this room would feel the same, I always hated the fact I was almost limited, my own skill set was limited by my own abilities, or my ideas were limited by what I could execute. Yeah. So as a designer, you're thinking, oh, if I'm not going to have that idea because I'm not going to be able to design it, I'm not going to be able to make it, so maybe I'll be less ambitious. And I think AI absolutely just opens that up. If you've got an idea, it can be made. You can have a proof of concept. You can have a visual thing to share to a client and go, this is in my head. It can be possible. And I love that it sort of unlimits a lot of that. And you're not limited by, I can't write, use AI. I can't draw, use AI. I can't design, use AI. I can't animate something, use AI. Almost like all the things that are probably limiting you as a creative person, that can be your little help, your magic pencil. So yeah, I think it's really exciting in that respect. And it actually makes you more creative as a person. Your ideas aren't limited by your own abilities.
Absolutely. Taz?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I personally think it's how non-creatives can actually finally tell me what they want, what they've always visualized in their heads, but they could never actually articulate it in a way that we could understand. So for me, a lot of it is actually my niece. It sounds very strange, but my niece is autistic, and she's always talked to me. She's got this ice cream monster in her head. She's always talked to me about this ice cream monster, but she can't draw it for me. She can't really tell me about it, but she can tell me the words ice cream, monster, and then arms. I'm like, I don't know what this means, but...
She talk about you?
It's probably me, but she always talks about it. So I was playing around on Firefly, which I have on my desktop, and I was like, okay, why don't we just play and have a see? And we went through loads of iterations, and she went, that's it. That's the thing that's in my head. And I just found it, just purely from a creative perspective, and a non-creative, I'm finally going to see things that people who couldn't articulate and couldn't visualize and couldn't show me what's in their heads. And we're going to get so many new ideas from completely different people. And I think as creatives, we do have this fear, and I totally get it, I have it too. You have this fear that someone might take your job, someone might take this vision that you've got. But you also have to understand there are people who've always wanted to be able to express themselves. We have the privilege, we have the empathy, we have the ability to create stuff that other people can't. And now people who actually couldn't do it, they have that functionality, they have that tool to help them articulate what they want to. And just seeing her do it, it was just really nice. And I finally know what the ice cream arms mean. It was little cone arms made out of ice cream. And I finally get it. That's what she had in her head all this time. So we did a little animation and we made it together. But the fact that I could do that with her, and honestly, it was pure because of AI. She couldn't tell me about it. She couldn't draw it, but she made it.
That sounds brilliant. And I think that whole sort of democratization of creativity, being able to be in the hands of those who may not even have like design programs and things to existing tools that you can use, now being in the hands of people who are creative but don't consider themselves as artists or writers or designers, etc. Being able to get ideas out, because that's what we're all looking for, isn't it? Is like, how do we get ideas out and how do we build and create those ideas? And that's what I find is going to be really exciting about this, is that it helps get that out. Right. Next question. how has AI already impacted the creative industries? And I asked you if you've had any examples of that. So anywhere that you've seen where there has been a good impact, maybe there's been a bad impact, but how do you guys think it's impacted the creative industries already?
There's an example I remember, like it came quite early on in the discussion, was a book that was made. It was a combination of using ChatGPT and Midjourney. And this guy made this book in 72 hours, and it was called Alice and Sparkle, I think. And it was kind of like a meta commentary on how AI is going to change things, but it was also a children's book. And he put it on Amazon, and then there was this massive backlash from illustrators who said, you know, it's demeaning the illustrator because you're doing it so quickly and you haven't been involved. And I think there's an interesting tension there that we still haven't quite resolved, which is he actually did something really kind of with merit, which was interesting. He did something new that had never been done before. Now, it looked visually a little bit duff, and it could be improved. But at the heart of it, there was like an idea there of, is there a different way of bringing stories to the world that people maybe who haven't written stories before, haven't had access to publishing before, how could you make that happen? I think that's the challenge with AI, but there's a lot of tension that we have to kind of get over in terms of how we make sure that the quality is there. Now, if Axel Schaefer and Julia Donaldson had done that exact same process, we'd be giving it D&AD awards because it'd be a perfect example of craft meeting the execution. And I think that's what we've got to work to. How do we bring the craft and the care and the editing and the creative direction into these things and still do new, exciting, different things like never before?
I totally agree with that. And I think that, like, actually, you know, humans at their essence are creators, right? And no matter what the tool, you are still going to need, you know, even a microphone was invented at one point, and everybody must have just been like, oh my God, you can amplify voices now. This is incredible. But actually, as we all know, someone with a microphone who doesn't have something good to say or can't sing, you know, are just not going to do much with that microphone, right? So, you know, similarly, when electricity was invented, like nobody would have imagined the internet or a Tesla at that point. So, like, we don't even know where it's going to go, but actually people's creative ability to be creatively discerning and to strategize and to storytell and be curious with a real heart and soul, you know, that is stuff that machines is never going to do. So, you know, the same process of a creative act from start till the moment where you think it's finished is going to be the same, whether it's a painting, a photograph, or something made with AI. It doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess thinking about, we're like very early in the journey of AI, and I think we're still slightly in the, maybe we could call it the performative of AI, like the AI is the story, like the idea. Yeah. There's loads of examples out there where the world's first AI, or we used AI to make this, and that's like the new Toys R Us ad they made, which was the story is the AI, when actually the story should be the story. Yeah. And I think there's a bit of like focus on the technology and the medium, not the message. And I think you get that with social, you got that with digital. You know, it all became, you know, that becomes the focus. But I think after that sort of evaporates a bit, I think we'll get to a point where it becomes another tool. I remember when Photoshop came out, that was like this big thing. And what you could create on it was quite rudimentary, but then people started creating amazing things. And you know, the craft, over the years, Photoshop hasn't radically changed, but what people create on it, it's radically changed. The ambition, the craft. So I think it's similar. It's a tool that will be used, and before you know it, it won't even be mentioned. It'll be there, under the surface. I'm just going to use that and get on with my day.
Because it's now it's sort of getting in the way of what the actual concept and execution is, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like
100%.
Everybody's talking about it's an AI thing, and it's kind of like, you know, are we not over that yet? Like, who cares? Is it a good idea? Does it tell a great story? Taz, have you got any?
Yeah, so even in my studio with my team, we don't, even when we use AI, it's not the sexy stuff. We do the processing, so that our ethos in our team is use AI to do the things that you, almost like the process-driven stuff so you have more time to be creative. Like, the whole point is that we want time we're creatives. We weren't hired to, you know, run spreadsheets or do things like that. We were hired for our ideation, for our thoughts, for the work that we do. So when we do use something, we use things like remove background, or we use things like, you know, when you have like a Premiere file and you just, there's so much copy, just auto transcribe that for me. I don't have time to sit there and just write down every single word that's coming from a video. So we do a lot of shoots, and my team and I were working on a lot of shoots. And the majority of the AI stuff that we use is never the end creative. It's always the process to building that creative. So it's the storyboards. We do them really quickly because we had like 2 days to shoot something and we needed to get everything approved. As I was mentioning to you, Landy, everything we had to get approved by 5 different stakeholders, and they weren't visual. So we were like, okay, it's got to look like this-ish. It's going to kind of look like this. This is what the location's going to look like. This is what the costuming probably going to look like. But the thing is, we have fashion designers who made the costumes. We have location scouters who found those. So it's like the initial process stuff was all AI. The actual execution, the real craft, the human element of it, that's always going to be human. And that was something that we're really passionate about in my team. Whenever we do use it, we use it for process. We use it to make things faster, batch process assets that just need to be resized or reframed. But when it comes to the actual ideation, the really strong concepts, those are always done by humans, and that's going to continue on my team to be done by that.
Do you guys think that it's going to bring a pressure of time onto people? You know, like everybody, I think clients are excited. It's like, it's going to speed things up. That means we can pay half price. Oh, yeah. You know, because it'll take you half the time. And I think that there's a real fear. I've got the fear about that, you know, and kind of like how we manage client expectations on that. Have you experienced anything like that yet?
Well, yeah, I mean, like most agencies, we are paid time and materials. So the incentive for clients is less time spent on things, less external costs. And for us, we sort of need to bill hours, when actually the industry really should be about billing value. You know, the work we do, what value is it worth? It might take an hour, might take 2 weeks. You know, it's somewhere in between, I'm sure. But yes, then you're using AI. I can cut the costs. I can cut the timelines. I know, no one's winning here. So yeah, I think we kind of have to find a middle ground with that stuff. There's no answer to it. But to your point, like a lot of it is, how do we cut out the stuff that's actually a bit of a waste of clients' money? Yeah. Like hand drawing scamps. Like, wow, that's a colossal use of time to get to a point of something that no one's ever going to see in the real world. So let's try and shortcut that and not charge the client for it.
I agree, and I actually think at the moment the way we're using it, particularly in terms of creative creation, right? It's not actually saving us any time at all. It's actually taking us a lot longer in a good way, because we're kind of exploring how to use it. Like, I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and she's tracking at the exact, her human growth rate is going at the same rate as AI, right? She's, on one level, she's super smart. On another level, she's kind of as thick as bricks, because she's still got a lot to learn, right? She's 5. Give her time. She'll be super cool and she'll be absolutely amazing. But we forget, I think, how nascent this technology is, and there's still a lot to do in terms of working out the process of, you know, you wouldn't expect a 5-year-old to be able to do a full day's work, right? So I think we're still kind of working at the edges of how we push it and use it. And I think that's part of the challenge, is trying to find not the workflow, but the use cases and the process for how you get to new things. Because you can create volume, but like, how do we create the things that are genuinely different and new?
Value. We had some examples that you guys had submitted of anyone who's doing anything interesting with AI. Annoyingly, we have to just sort of twist our head to see this screen.
Yeah, this was me, actually. This is Nice Aunties, which I'm sure lots of people have come across, but she's just an amazing artist that a few months ago just popped up, you know, and it's just blown everybody away. I love that, like, culturally, it's sort of based around, you know, the whole idea of these, like, very enthusiastic aunties that kind of want to change the world and help, and, you know. But I think it was more just to be able to put up an image, actually, of just you know, a creative vision and style that like it goes way beyond those dreadful kind of fantasy images that come out of Midjourney, which most people, you know, it's like, I think that that's the thing as well about just AI and speed is like, you know, yeah, you can put some words in and get, you know, get an image out, but that's not it. That's not it. And
yeah, that's not the answer.
there was another artist called Rigranisto that I saw recently, which I don't have an image of, but his work was just absolutely blew me away, and I've just found it very fresh and exciting. And he goes through a really incredible, rigorous process that involves a lot of his own beautiful photography as well. So yeah, I mean, there are just brilliant examples out there already of real creative genius bobbing up with this, and I think it's super exciting.
Yeah, this one was someone shared with me yesterday. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. It's the Belgian opera Le Monet or something. Anyway, this was a campaign they're running to obviously get more people to book tickets for the opera. But their whole theme is fate. So they made the whole campaign in AI. Obviously, you don't know what the output's going to be. So actually, from a creative point of view, I quite liked it. I go against what I said earlier about it being performative. There is a bit of that I like that idea of the sense of fate. But they've leaned into it. The typography, the imagery, they've not shied away from the AI-ness of it. And it's actually very tasteful and very beautifully done and feels quite at odds with a very classic, you know, opera and very sort of, you know, classic luxury look, which I quite liked. I think there's another one which is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, which was, I don't know if the Motorola campaign, where they executed a load of models on catwalks walking along with these Motorola-themed outfits, like the logo sort of subtly put in there. It's just really ghastly, because it's just the execution is horrible. It just feels really inhumane and plastic, and there's no story and no reason. It just looked like we're cutting corners. It's somewhere between the craft and the story. It just doesn't work.
Just falls in the middle.
Falls in the middle, yeah.
I don't know how to go backwards on this. There we go. And then, Taz, you had a thought on a campaign as well.
Yeah, to be honest, the one that you just showed, I thought that was a really interesting one. So I work with, it's really interesting. Everyone on my team is super creative, like far more than I am. They're all amazing. And one of them is one of our artists. She is a fashion designer as well. So what she does, she's built her own model with Firefly. So she's actually trained it to understand her artwork. So she has a Rococo style that she creates. And so she's trained it to understand patterns, Rococo patterns, fed it with her own Rococo patterns that she's created by hand. And so she got it to create a whole series of different patterns. She's made those, she's printed them, she's hand-drawn them in reality, and she's made dresses from these generated images that she was inspired by. So it was really interesting. I always find her a very interesting artist, and she's in my team. But I find her a really interesting artist because it's, as opposed to that, where there's nothing, there's nothing going on. She's very much still craft and technology. And I think the main thing about AI, it should never be a shortcut to creativity. That's not the point of it. It's an assistant to help you in your creative process.
Yeah.
And I always think that's the whole point, is that there always has to be a human element, and AI doesn't. They don't understand weird. AI doesn't understand, like humans, we can jump from 3 different things. It makes absolutely no sense, but a computer doesn't understand that because programmatically, they just don't work that way.
Yeah.
We can jump from a completely different topic to another one. So we can go from Lego to Elizabethan art, and we could create something from that, and AI just can't do that. So even from that perspective, I still find it really interesting seeing how humans can take the little nuggets you can get, the way it can give you all these different ideation pieces, and then you can take that and just create into something else. And the thing with me and my team is that when we ideate, the nice thing about AI is that it ideates almost as, I can't use my stylus as quickly as I can ideate. I've got 100 ideas in my head and I can't draw them all. I forget one while I'm trying to draw another. Like, it's usually what happens in our team. We have these big brainstorms and we just forget. We always try to visualize them, draw them, put them aside. You lose something along the way. The nice thing is that it's quite good at capturing content. You get the idea and then you move on to the next. Yeah. And it's never the final idea. It's always just like, this is a scamp. This is something that we use as a mock. It's a storyboard, it's a mood board, and that's pretty much how we use it.
Yeah. So if we had a crystal ball and we're going right 5 to 10 years into the future, what's AI going to be capable of? How do you think we'll be using it? And how's that going to affect probably a lot of the people in this room, like the emerging talent?
I'll I think that who knows where it's going to go. I mean, I just think it's funny when you introduced us as like sort of AI experts or something. I was just like, there is no such thing. Yeah, I think it's just going to be hugely exciting. But all I would say is wrap your arms around it. You know, believe in yourself as a creative. Know that when you create something, it has an energy and a vibration to it that is something that's utterly unique to you, you know, and that, you know, whether you've done it with a box of paints or whether you've used AI in a computer, nothing will change that. And the human soul and its ability to move people and tell stories will just always be what's needed. So, yeah, I would say have no fear, run right into the center and enjoy. That's what.
I've got a suspicion that it will continue to kind of technologically grow really quickly, because that seems to be the path. But I think there's kind of an example in like autonomous cars, right? Autonomous cars have managed to get to a place where they now exist, they can be used, they're out there, right? The technology is completely nailed, pretty much. Now, there's things around it that aren't nailed in terms of the usage types and how you use it, and the use cases. And I think over the next couple of years, that's going to be the thing that will feel like the pace will slow just a little bit while we all kind of work out how and when it fits into our daily lives. But then I think, like you say, it'll just merge into everything and kind of disappear and go underneath. So, like, you know, the Adobe suite has had AI in it for ages, but a little clone tool is kind of AI, right? We've had that in Photoshop since day one, and it's just kind of been there and disappeared. So I think simultaneously it'll continue to grow really, really fast and continue to develop, but we'll get less and less kind of amazed while we work out how we're going to use it. Yeah. I think. Maybe not.
Jeff, what do you think, how's that going to affect new creatives coming into the industry? Where this might go? Do you think it'll affect education and what students are getting taught, how students are getting taught? Or do you think, you know, is there going to be a design classes that it's all built around AI? Or do you think it's just going to still stay a background tool?
Yeah, the education one's a difficult one. I mean, I don't know. Actually, I'd be interested to know, in terms of tools you guys are using now at university, like, are you using Adobe tools now? Because when I was a young student, they didn't exist. And I spoke to someone earlier in the stalls.
500 years old, by the way.
I'm very old. When I did my A-level art, they had to phone the the exam board, to check if I could do it on a computer, because no one had done a graphic design A-level on a computer before. It was all done manually with paper and scissors and pens and all this. And I'm like, wow, I know that was 20-something, nearly 30 years ago. But at the time, and it made me think, oh yeah, I would have probably been the person using AI then, and that would have been the thing that did. And actually, so it served me well, because my career has sort of gone from there. But even if you're not using it or they're not teaching it, you've got to lean in. You've really got to lean in. And you're, from a commercial point of view, from a business point of view, you're so more likely to get that first role if you are the one who faster to adopt it, faster, and knows more than the person employing you. Because half the time, I'm looking at you all here, like, you interview people and they go, oh, I'm really good at this thing. You go, well, I want to learn that. Maybe if I employ you, you can help me do it a bit better. So I think, of all technologies, whether it's Adobe's Creative Suite, AI, shortcutting anything with tools, technology, absolutely lean into it. And if you're not being taught it, teach yourself, because you're going to thank yourself for it.
Absolutely. absolutely. Taz, you got anything to add on 5 to 10 years where you think it's going? Maybe you've got a bit of insider knowledge.
No, I don't. 5 to 10 years. It's a funny one. In 5 to 10 years, honestly, I think there'll be a massive oversaturation. I think it will be everywhere. It will be everywhere you look. And I think it will be, we're never going to need creatives more than in 5 to 10 years. You guys are never going to lose your jobs because we are so unique. We have that empathy. We know how to translate someone's vision, someone's thoughts, someone's hopes into a creative piece. We know how to do that. Most people don't know how to do that. No matter how much they use AI, no matter how much they train AI, they can't get it to understand the human condition. And I think that's something that even in 5 to 10 years, no matter how well we train it, and funny enough that you were saying this, but I think it might get to a point that it's the people who know how to use AI that are the ones that are going to end up being the ones who rule the world, because if you don't know how to use it, you're going to be left behind. And it's not something that we can't control that. No one in this panel can control it. It's happening beyond us. It's beyond this room. It's something that's going along. And it's same with Web. When I started, I was a painter. I used to exhibit my artwork in a couple of very small places in Tottenham. No one came. But that's what I used to do back in when I first started. And I had to learn how to use the web because that's when it was the big thing. HTML was coming in. So I was like, oh, I'll teach myself this. I learned Flash, which didn't help me in the long run. But it gets to a point you evolve. And even especially I think in the age that we are, I had to constantly evolve. I had to always shift. Like my manual skills aren't working here. I need to learn how to use HTML. I need to know how to use JavaScript. I have to learn how to use AS2, AS3. And then you end up shifting and learning more and more. And then I end up becoming an animator. And now that I've looked at that breadth of work, it's been really helpful because it's not quite a jack of all trades. It gives you a really good insight into how the industry has grown and all the different facets and where you can find your own journey and your own story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was going to say, also to add on that, I've definitely unlearned more things than I've learned. Flash, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, all this. Oh God, all the Adobes. And
it's
then
like there's always something.
It's always something new.
Always something new to learn, and I think that's it as a young creative. It's like embrace it, get stuck into it. It's like not to be intimidated by it. Try it out, have a go. Press some buttons, see what happens. It's because if you don't and you start shying away from it, you do get left behind very quickly in conversations and in the ability to just be able to generate stuff quickly. And it is a great asset as an employer when young folk come along and they are all over the tools and they know how to use stuff, because you're like thank God, because everybody's getting older and they're not as fresh and they need that kind of young, fresh brains that know how to use this tech in their teams. So yeah, get tore into it. On ethics around AI, what considerations is there that we as creatives should be thinking about when using AI? Is there any?
Don't ever say in the style of.
Don't say in the style of.
I think that they will become some sort of legal ruling for that. I imagine. Yeah,
I imagine so as well. I mean, we spend a lot of our time developing things for like brand governance and management and stuff. And weirdly, the way in which that works best is to really double down on kind of the misuse. Like when you look through like guidelines document, the page that is the most useful is the don'ts, right? So pumping in the don'ts to AI is a very useful way to be able to help it understand things. But then that in itself brings challenges around where do we set, wrong and right on a graphic level is probably easier, but there are other things around kind of a language and how language is used as well. I think it's a developing thing, right? We're going to have to learn and change and adapt our processes, and the way in which we've been used to doing things is going to have to change in order to make sure we make it's still us making the decisions. It's just going through a process which is additional to us as well.
I was going to add, like, a number of our clients, I won't name names, but some very big brands, they write into our contracts, we cannot use AI. So for them, it's black and white. Generative AI, no, you can't, we can't, because the grey area, the legalities or ethic, they don't want to be exposed. They don't want to have a legal writ against them from an artist that's been ripped off or etc. So in some cases it's black and white, but it also means that creative, legal, society, culture, all these things have to move at the same space, at the same pace, because otherwise it's not really up to us to make decisions on ethics of stuff. So yeah, it's incredibly grey area. And I was just thinking about this as well, of we're all slightly guilty of, when we're selling ideas to clients, the borrowedness of stuff, the mood film, the references, the thrown together visuals we've done in Photoshop of stuff we've found online and thing we've traced to do the scan, whatever it is. We're all doing it in a way anyway, manually or mentally. Sometimes you go, this is a really good, oh shit, I've seen this idea before, that's why I like it. We're all doing it a little bit, we're all squirrels, but it's AI is doing that at scale, and it's doing it in a way that you're not even sure, you don't know where all that stuff's being brought, taken from and things like that. And it's just accelerated that squirreling. Is that a word? I can't even say it.
Squirreling.
Squirreling. Oh, I won't say it again. But I think that's going to be the thing that has to keep up, the legalities, the rules.
Yeah.
And it has to be a fair playing field. Some brands are a bit fast and loose with legalities as it is. Let's shove a celebrity here or use a trending track on TikTok there without legal rights to use it.
Yeah.
So some brands always are going to be there, take the risk. But yeah, as I said, until everyone catches up to the same thing and has the same sort of playing field, it's going to be a grey area for a long while, I think.
Taz, you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think just be careful of the models that you're using, the data sets and it's always tricky, right? You're not writing these data sets, you're not the ones that are in charge of it, but try and use tools. Obviously we have one, but there are others. It's not just Adobe, but there are other ones that exist. Other competitors do exist, but it's one of those ones, just try and keep an eye on the ones that are ethical, the ones that were the actual the contributors or the people that the data is being mined from, that they are also being recompensed for their work. So try and make sure you do that. But also with a lot of, even with the ethics of this bias training as well with AI doesn't quite understand. So for example, if I write creative director in AI, it's not going to put me out there. I'm not going to be the result that pops up. But I exist, and I am still somebody who is in the industry. And there are a lot of people that look like me in the industry. So it's one of those things that's another thing when it comes to ethics. And there's a lot of bias training that you have to give AI. I know we're doing that on our side, but it's very interesting when you see how it has preconceived stereotypical notions because it's learning from a generalized data set. So it's trying to find that, and again, it doesn't mean to be, but it is a little bit, it's looking at stereotypes because that's what it's trained to do. It's trained to see where the patterns are. And because it does that, it spits out content that you think, oh, that's a bit risky. Like maybe, it feels a bit, 1950s. We kind of end up falling into that skew as well. So it's a mix of both ethics and biases. So a lot of the time when we are using these, and the interesting thing with Firefly, the one that we have, if you put Spider-Man in Firefly, you're not going to get Spider-Man, the superhero. You're going to get some weird spider and a weird man mixed together because we can't train on IP. Like we've got a very specific thing that we cannot have any IP trained into our data sets, but obviously that we're behind the curve with a lot of other data sets and a lot of other models because we don't have that, because we ethically and legally can't have it. But it's one of the things that we have to do to make sure that we are at least trying to protect as much as we can. But it is such a broad area, and there are so many different people and different styles, and styles are getting into different systems. And sometimes you're not too sure where those are coming from. We are trying to do that as much as we can on our side, but it is something that we're going to just keep on having to watch and see how this
technology evolves and how we evolve with it.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say as well that Adobe is the safe space, because of the indemnity that they give against IP and what data they have inputted. At Channel 4, we just use Adobe. That's the only creative AI tool we use because of that. I do think that the IP...
Because it brings a comfort, or...
No, because they say that they will legally cover any challenge that you get on the basically your output. Whereas, Getty are in a massive lawsuit against OpenAI for scraping all of their images, and nobody really knows how that's going to pan out, and that's why, Jeff was saying that a lot of briefs will say do not use AI because most people are sort of terrified of it. But I do think that the way we have copyright and IP set up right now, I don't think it can withstand what's coming with AI, so it will be quite interesting. Like, I'm massively into the crypto art scene and stuff, and I am in these group chats with youngsters who just don't give a fuck. I mean, I bought this thing called a Bitcoin puppet. I don't know if anyone knows what that is, right? But I'm in this group chat and and even on Discord and everything, and they just will use any imagery for any laugh, for any meme, and they're just like, yeah, copyrights for bitches, And I mean, that's what the youth are saying. So, you know what I mean? It's like, look at what the youth are doing and saying, and then that's probably what's coming. So I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, there'll be a big job to do in the background around the copyright legalities. All of that is going to be huge impact on how we're able to use it as well.
I was going to say also in the other direction, from brands and IP owners going, that's my eyeball on that thing, therefore see you in court. And you're like, this is getting ridiculous now. Like, there's almost AI trained to spot the things in other people's work that's going to make us money, because it's litigation nightmare of people stealing, but also people looking for that, ambulance chasers as such,
I think that's why we're mostly using it on the conceptual side of things and just in the ideation process. And it's like anything that we actually then execute is crafted and created by us and have full ownership over, to give that comfort and give that comfort to clients as well. And also because we want to create it. It's like, don't want to use something that's been spat out of a computer. Can I ask, in this room, what advice would you give to emerging creatives looking to incorporate into their work today?
I definitely say one thing: don't do it alone. Do it with people. There's a danger, I think, that the process can overtake everything, and the idea of someone hunched over a kind of table just inputting stuff. It's not about just the input. It's about the information gathering on one side, and you do that as a team together and go out and spend time with each other and work out where you're drawing the inspiration from, and then make it more of a collaborative exercise, because at the other end, you're going to all have to get together and edit it and work out what we're keeping, what we're not, and what we're putting back into the loop. So thinking of it much more as like a collaborative tool, and design particularly, and brand work definitely, is 100 times better when you do it collaboratively rather than try to solve it with one hit and one person in one room in 1 hour. You're much better to make it part of a much more connected process rather than just try find the solution with the right prompts.
I would say don't be overwhelmed with all of the different things that are out there. There's so many different softwares. There's, you just every... all the emails and the things you see pop up, 20 top tips on how to, but I would say that, don't just go to one piece of software and then try and just master that, because each one has its own personality and is good for different things. And any artist that is coming out doing really great work is going through a series of processes, where they'll sort of ideate in one piece of software, then they'll bring it into Photoshop, then they'll put it back into something else, and then, so yeah, just sort of have fun. But then also, you're so early. Like all of the people in this room, it's just such an exciting time. There is nobody who has figured it out yet. Nobody's an expert yet. So just get your hands in and enjoy.
Absolutely. Jeff, any thoughts on advice to give emerging creatives on how they can incorporate into their work?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said it. It is lean in. I mean, I know there's a lot of naysaying. I don't know if there's a lot of naysaying in your age and experience, I think, but I think only take a dip into LinkedIn and all the out-of-work creative directors who are rather rampantly anti-AI, and it's hard to sort of think, oh, maybe there's an ounce of truth there. Maybe there is, a need to push back against the machine and the death of creativity and all this sort of stuff. But equally, don't be that voice. We all talked about like all the things you're going to go through your career, evolve. AI won't be called AI in a few years; it'll be something else, and it will evolve into something. I highly doubt your first job, second job will be the same as your fourth, fifth, sixth. You'll be doing something totally different. There'll be a theme of creativity or craft or whatever it is, but it will be an entirely different thing, and that's healthy. That's fine. It's okay. So yeah, as we all said, you just lean into it and be really open-minded about it, because there's a whole generation of people who've probably taken you on who are either know they need to be, but not willing to be, anti it, but also everyone else around the business will be like, no, we need people like you to come in and push the agenda on that. So it makes sense career-wise, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Should we take some questions from the audience? Anything that you would like to know, anything you're concerned about, any thoughts? Anybody like to ask any questions? Don't be shy. You're in a safe space.
I just thought while we're waiting for a question, there's a thing called the Pessimist Archive. I don't know if anyone's seen it online. It's just a great website which just will give you some perspective on just, like you were saying, all the kind of, the creative directors on LinkedIn going, this is an outrage, is that actually, like when the Walkman was first invented, they tried to ban it in loads of places because they thought...
as well, yeah.
Yeah, because they thought it would be the end to civilization with people having headphones on, and, it's just a really good laugh on that front.
What's it called?
The Pessimist Archive.
There's a fantastic Daily Mail article which was, this is the internet. It's not going to take off. It was like something ridiculous, that, wasn't it? And it was one page in 1996 or 95, and it was just this most pessimistic thing of this thing called the internet. And you look back at it now and go, yeah, you got that right. And I think that's probably a lot about AI.
Cool. We have a question.
Yeah, hiya. It was just a question really about, you seem very positive about AI in general, and essentially, is there a point where you feel like there's a line that it will cross in kind of like an industry where you're creating stuff for clients? Money is often a driving factor in that. And although you're saying things should be valued based on the value you're providing rather than the time put into it, it seems to me that it's inevitably going to end up going for the cheaper option in the long run. And AI is going to kind of remove that aspect of the time and the hours put in creatively by people. I feel like there's more value in something that somebody's handcrafted or painted themselves and taken 100 hours to create rather than something produced in the space of 10 minutes. Do you feel like there's a point where if you allow yourselves to hypothesize that scenario, it's inevitably going to get to a point where it will require less people, less time, less money, and that personal creative output will just be diminished?
I personally feel like there'll just be space for both things. Someone came up with a really good analogy about sliced bread, and that someone inventing the sliced bread machine, that everyone was like, well, why do we need that? And, and then suddenly it became really easy for people to, just make sandwiches really quickly or toast or whatever. But actually, there is still room for the artisan sourdough bread that you grow yourself. And, there's room for all of it. So I think that there still will be value on something that someone creates, spends 100 hours creating.
But using that example, like bakers will enjoy creating the process of fermenting the bread and producing it and putting in the intricacies in the design. But I can't imagine there's many people that are really annoyed they don't get to cut bread anymore.
I think, I just think that there will be, I agree with you, there will be a homogenizing of work, and I just think it will be you get what you pay for, a sort of situation where the stuff that is churned out super, super quickly will be on one level, and there will be much higher creative on another level. So it will be kind of like, which do you want, really?
Yeah, and if you think about if every, I'm thinking from like an advertising and sort of communications point of view, if every single brand is using the same tools, creating the same work, we're back to ground zero again. And because the whole thing of advertising is to stand out. So then one of those brands needs to stand out in category, and that may be getting a better tool, or maybe going back to doing something handmade or crafted or it's more expensive, whatever it is, every brand needs to stand out. So if it's going to be a great leveler, and as you say, there's going to be the democratization for even brands, like everyone can advertise, everyone can create content. You don't have to have a huge budget, but there's always going to be that brand who's going to want to spend more, needs to spend more to stand out and be the better, most visible, memorable brand in the market with the best design that's different to everyone else's. And that may be the artisan, that may be the craft. It may be a bigger AI machine, whatever it is, or just a better way of viewing it. So I think there's always going to be that race.
Yeah.
Everyone's always going to, homogenization always has someone that's going to step above. And I think that's going to be the constant battle, which keeps us all in a job and keeps us all pushing our craft and getting better.
I think that's it. I think your question's completely right and is true. But to be honest, there's always been kind of bad average work in the world that was a bit cheaper. But I think the answer to solving that is actually in the question, which is it's about being creative and creative people and creative thinking. And the one thing that AI can't do is make the kind of best wrong decision, because it always makes the algorithmically right decision. And the truth is the very best work is just slightly wonky or wrong. And that's what makes it different, and that's what makes it special, and that's what makes it memorable, and what makes it valuable as well. So the answer is in more creativity and more creative thinking. But the truth is there will always be that kind of challenge, and it's always existed, I think, in the background. It's maybe going to raise to the surface a bit more in the next few years.
Yeah, and I think it's just the democratization of tools generally do this. So for example, we all have a camera on our phones. That's not killed the photographer. The photographer is still really important, very similar to, even with videographers. Now let's say you have an influencer who shoots something on their phone. Before, that was a video. In my day, I would send out an entire team of production, really, artisan filmmakers and sound creators and audio specialists. They don't exist, they do still exist, but they don't exist in the way they used to, which is, and you're right, there's definitely something where the demand has actually lessened because you've got more availability to these tools, but then those artisans become more specialized, and then people like myself go to them first rather than go into somebody who can shoot something on their phone. I need someone who's an artisan. I need someone who can create something, who still has that handcrafted skill. So I think it's something that will always exist, but you make a really good point that when you democratize something, it does get to that point where people will always try and look for a cheaper option. It's just something that just generally happens in whatever industry it is, whether it's factories, whatever it is, it always does happen. I think the main thing that I always try and strive for, I'm all about artisan, I'm all about handcraft, and I'd always try and push for my team and myself to always work and make sure that we always try and keep that human element to anything that we do.
Got another question here? Oh, we've got a couple of questions.
So everyone seemed to be saying, use AI, but then you said most of your briefs say don't use AI. So I would like to hear that comment, and then also what is considered using AI? Is that generative fill? Where's that line when the brief says that?
Well, I'll take the example. I think it is very much, I think we've talked about it, what consumers may see and what happens behind closed doors. I think that's a big difference. What we use tools to shortcut, to sell the idea, to do a pre-production, storyboards or some of the process or some of the initial ideation, that's fine. That's all behind closed doors. When it gets out to the consumer, into the world of an output, that becomes the line in the sand where we can't use it there. Generative fill-in Photoshop, I think it's in the grey area. If we know that Adobe is, in the cleaner end of the spectrum, then absolutely, I think that's probably fine. We'll probably get away with that. But those rules aren't written out in black and white, so we have to take a bit of an educated punt on the risk. But I think that's part of the excitement. There's no real rules and stuff in place yet, and we're all, working out as we go along, like most things.
Yeah, I think that's it. We're having to make educated and considered decisions around how we use it, and that's where your own ethics comes into it. Like as creative people, and you want to create unique and individual work, you're then not comfortable putting out work that you know has been generated through someone else's thoughts, and so I think there will be a sort of clearer divide will come personally of what you're comfortable presenting to your clients and where you know that's come from. The same as at the minute if you knew you were copying an idea or you were like vaguely ripping a style off or anything like that, it's like something that just wouldn't sit with you as a person to do. So I think as much as it'll be written into contracts, no AI, we have to take our clients on the journey of where we're using that and at what stage of a process we're using that and how we're using it to actually benefit their creativity and their creative output for them, rather than them thinking this is going to be copycat work or copyright infringement from things.
I did a talk with an IP lawyer from Sheridan's who was kind of he's at the forefront of all of these conversations, and his advice to agencies was, actually just write into the brief and the contract that it's a shared responsibility, that there's, that there is an unknown to this whole area, and that actually that can kind of just cover you, really. It's like, because a lot of clients at the beginning would write things saying like, and you take full responsibility for, we'd like you to use AI, we would like you to use AI, but you take full responsibility for all of the images, and you just think, well, that can't be a thing. Yeah,
you can't take the responsibility. I've been working on a project where initially it was like, right, we can't have any AI images, and they want to use stock library images because they feel safer with stock library, even though that's the most homogenized, and it's, the images that they're, suggesting that we use, we're like, oh my God. And then you're showing them stuff that AI has created, and they're going, oh, I like that, can I have that now? And you're going, no. Because we have no idea where that comes from and what has actually generated it, so you can't have it. But what you could do is you could commission a photographer to go out and actually, now that we've got a kind of vibe and a feel for where that's going, why don't we actually hire somebody to go and do that, and then the images will be yours. So it's actually helping us push them away from the stock imagery stuff and actually engaging with photographers again, which has been quite a nice outcome of that.
Because even stock imagery isn't watertight. We've had a few instances where, have we got rights to show that building? Is that person in the background signed model release? And the legal team start going, no, in the terms and conditions, we can still be sued if we use this image, even though we bought it from a well-renowned stock library. Like, wow, this isn't, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, I've got a 30 grand lawsuit against me using an image that I licensed off of a stock library of a piece of graffiti, and it was like, you didn't get the graffiti artist's permission to use it in that piece of work. And I was like, well, I didn't know that I had to. I bought this image off of a stock library, and now the artist is going off his nut. And I'm like, oh, shit, get it down, take it down. So it's like everything feels like a minefield, and it's just sort of, how do you do the right thing? And it's like, being as authentic as you can and actually creating it from your own hand or from other people's hands is going to be, hopefully will bring more opportunity, I think, to re-engage people who think they're potentially going to be out of jobs. That's what I feel. Loads of questions, brilliant.
Yeah, okay.
Oh.
So I got a question. Do you think the normalization of AI will create a domino effect towards the lesser demand of human creativity, which puts creatives out of job? Because when AI becomes normalized, I'm afraid that people in general will value, they think that AI creation is enough. And so that's why there's like less demand for human creativity, and which means less jobs. What do you think?
Sorry, I couldn't quite.
I think that I think it was just will AI put creatives out of work because
Is that the essence of your
people
question?
would think that the output is enough. I think just going back to what we were saying previously, it's everything needs. I mean, also I just think the word AI, is going to become a bit like the word digital. I mean, it's just going to be ubiquitous, so it's not going to be really a thing. You're still going to need someone to have an idea and to curate from the images that are being presented and present that back, possibly with some copy. Like there's a whole. There's just a whole world around it, which I think around anything. When it comes to, if you're talking about work for clients, I think that the whole process from start to finish will still exist. Being briefed, coming up with a strategy, coming up with an idea. And just I don't think machines will replace that very quickly.
No, I agree, but I think it might put a few people who maybe aren't committed to being creative slightly out of a job. People who are kind of on the fridge, who aren't really kind of invested in it, because I think it requires you to really think about how you're adding your creativity and your focus. Like a mate of mine, and I always screw up this analogy, but he kind of uses the analogy, but kind of it's like water, right? Water used to be really, really hard to get. So creative people made mugs, and they made pipes, and they made vases to hold stuff. And actually, as soon as water became more abundant, creative people had to get a bit more creative with the stuff they were making to be able to do stuff with water. So they made fountains, and they made swimming pools, and they made rubber dinghy rapids, right? And that's where we are now. It's kind of like you have to employ more creativity. So I think it's a good thing. It'll make us all a little bit more ambitious or thoughtful or push things. Which can't be a bad thing, right?
I think, that's only a good thing, isn't it? Anything that pushes our creative ability to express thoughts and express ideas, I see as a great asset, a great tool. Any other questions? Oh, the guy in the red hat.
Thank you. Yeah, so one of the biggest issues I see with AI, and that causes a big worry, is scraping. So mass images being taken and like copied in the same art style, and like you say, we've seen loads of lawsuit cases and copyright infringement. I was just curious as what you guys see as a sort of resolution for this, this aspect, because it is a big thing.
So, are you saying what's the issue of scraping images?
Yeah.
And that's going to lead to.
Well, it's more just sort of like you mentioned earlier, like taking in the style of, like, how do we stop people, taking images that are done specifically to copy, like another person's style?
I don't think you can stop it, but I do think that there will become some way of AI being able to police itself, in the sense that like people won't be able to prompt and just say in the style of Wes Anderson, for instance, or So I do think that I think some legalities and guardrails will come in around that. Yeah, I mean at the moment, if you want to use AI and not be worried about that, use Adobe.
This isn't an Adobe.
It's not an Adobe ad, by the way. Taz was really she really didn't want this to be about Adobe.
Slagging Adobe off.
But they are the ones that, like I said, it's a safe space if you want to play and not worry too much about that.
Yeah. Other questions?
So I know we're probably over time, but a lot of the examples that you gave of when to use it or not to use it were in the professional world. Most of the people in here are students. What advice would you give them in building their portfolios? Again, as a teacher, we're always talking about use it. It's a tool. It's part of the many repertoire to have. Don't get left behind. Lean in. But would you rather hire someone who essentially leveraged a tool and made a bunch of AI imagery, or an artist who went through the craft and had to struggle and eke it out and then use the tool in ways. Because you're all talking about don't use it use it for all of your work up front, but don't let the real world see it. What do you want to see in their portfolio so that you want to hire them? I think that would be a question they'd all like to hear.
I think from my perspective, I just want to see great ideas and great creativity. I almost sort of like don't really care at this point in time how that has been produced, whether, it's like a great piece of work is a great piece of work, and when the student says, I went out and I wrote every word in that book, and I photographed every image myself in that book, or I filmed that thing myself. I'm like, that's all great, but the thing that I'm evaluating is that a great solution to that problem, rather than did they have all of those skills themselves to produce that piece. So I think for me, I'm always going to be evaluating it on the solution, the creative leap that the piece has made. And I'm interested to know how they managed to create the piece and what skills they've then got in the background of that piece. But I'm most upfront looking at, have they been able to make a creative leap for the audience that they're trying to speak to come up with that solution. I think that's what I'll always be looking for, no matter what tools anybody can use.
The answer is definitely both. And I think if you credit the tools you used and how the mediums, that's fine. And I think I would want both skills. With a business savviness, craft is amazing, and I absolutely love craft. But equally, if someone, I need 2 years to make everything I do, from a business point of view, I sort of go, well, that's not very commercial. So, yeah, it's a bit of both. It's a bit of a woolly answer, but that's reality.
I'm going to go back to my daughter again. I feel guilty instantly about telling her off early. But she has a willful naivety, right? And the benefit of sitting in these seats as opposed to sitting in these seats here is you can break stuff, you can do stuff that is disruptive, you can snap it, right? You can kind of go, AI is meant to be done this way, I'm going to ignore all the rules, going to do it completely differently, I'm going to break all the copyright laws, I'm going to do whatever I want, and create something new. Like, create something that we haven't seen before and that you can tell a story behind and you're kind of passionate behind. Like, what's the punk version of AI? What's the version of it that just is like a pirate and ignores all those rules and comes from that Discord thread that you were reading, right? I want to see the portfolio from the people on that Discord thread, because eventually everybody will have to kind of find a way to make it real and get it out in the world. But for now, like, all rules are off, right? You can kind of do anything you like.
I think whatever stirs you, is what is actually really important. So whether someone is just working in a computer with AI or whether they're handcrafting something, I would be happy to see either or both. I think it's really lovely when AI is used for, when people who love to make things, and what they do is they use that for the ideation and go through a whole load of processes and then take some imagery out and then hand make something really beautiful from that image. So, it doesn't need to be about just fast stuff that's in a computer, you know what I mean? And that being in any way less worthy than anything else. I think does your work move you? Does it move other people and resonate with them? That's all there is to it.
I think that's a good thing to end on. Always make sure your work moves someone, solves a problem, answers a question, and talks to the audience that it's intended to, no matter what tools you use to do that. Thanks, everybody. Deep, deep stuff.